Hello world, Auxie Cortez coming live from Web3, and today we split the day in between technical and I would say storytelling because I really sat down and focused on the lore around our NFT collection. So to give a brief overview about that, we're using learn.io or Learnio as our platform to allow people to learn Web3, where there's just being communication, community based. We are planning on uh, curating content to create a Web3 course and really just become a well known brand within the Web3 space to recruit learners. And on top of that, we want to really establish this as a blockchain startup. So we've been thinking about longevity, introducing protocols. One area we really want to focus on is on proof of competency, how to create your process to make sure that you are knowledgeable on the web. So it's be your on-chain resume and all the magic stuff that would go in between. So to get there, we have to start from the ground up, right? Building a protocol is probably one of the most technical, challenging things because you have to create an algorithm, you have to develop it, you have to make sure your consensus protocols are on check. And it's a mix of economics, sociology, technology, even finance and tokenization. So that's the ambitious goal. But knowing that we have stepping stones, and one of them is launching an NFT collection. And the NFT collection we're calling a scholar. So we've had this entity for around, I would say, several weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and we've been building the art and the roadmap. So we really want to focus on the utilization. We don't want to build a house of cards where it's just about art and vibes. We really want to make this a legitimate startup where our users who purchase a scholar have utility and can have a stable ground that backs the value. And one of the important things about a collection is the narrative. So I'm not going to dive too deep into the roadmap just yet because it is IP where we want to be very careful on how we distribute it out. But just know we're really thinking about utilization. It's not just a short-term gimmick. We really want to make this entity something that's going to stand and yeah, I would say withstand the test of time as the punks are doing. We're definitely going to have our own take at it, but we're thinking extremely long term with this collection. So, stepping stone within a collection itself is getting the lore, the story, the narrative about that. And I sat down and think, okay, how is this scholar approach going to go on? And I think the perfect summary of it is it's actually quite complicated, but basically here's the overview. So, and part of this is from real life, real observings and theories, I would say. So being alive, being a homo sapien, we all share the commonality that we share are a genetic sequence, right? We all have a DNA sequence that's fairly similar. We're all fairly commonly related, and the DNA always wants to survive, right? It wants to reduce and mitigate the risk of it going extinct. So technology has been part of our lives for the past couple of decades, and it's getting more and more prominent. And the theory is that our genetics is taking note of this. And the thing about genetics is it's not like real-time feedback where genetics tells you it's a very gradual process that happens. But my theory is that genetics is taking note of technology and it's programming in a very subconscious way humans and Homo sapiens to advanced technology to reduce the risk of going extinct. What I mean by that is that if we can create a new vehicle for our genetic DNA to live, then it doesn't have to rely on Homo sapiens anymore. It's transcending into a new entity. So what I mean by that is, right, let's just say that, and the thing about genetics is it doesn't think it's not conscious in what we traditionally think. It's more of doing real-time calculation, adapting, and surviving, right? Like the Charles Darwin principle of evolution is not the strongest, or the fastest that survive. It's the most adaptable. So this genetic sequence is adapting to technology and saying, okay, there's something that could be going on here. But where it gets interesting is how we interpret that. DNA won't explicitly tell us, okay, build for the web, build this digital world. But basically, the premise is that our DNA is programming and it's incentivizing us to build into the technology world, build an infrastructure, create a vehicle and a new entity to reduce the risk of going extinct. And this is where the scholar comes in. The scholar is the entity of the web. These are the autodidacts and people that are endlessly learning with endless potential of consciousness. And they're the ones that are going to be the main distributors and controllers of the digital world. The metaverse is coming. Excuse me, just a human behavior. We're on the web much more, and those that are there first and that progress and that adapt and learn the most are going to be the ones that progress the most. And these are the scholars. The scholar is going to be the entity in the metaverse that is the most omnipotent. Why? Because they have the higher consciousness. What I mean by this, what I mean by consciousness itself, because it's a nuanced word, is ability to process stimulus, articulate it with semantics, and make calculated judgment. So it's real-time processing, interpreting, processing, and then making sense of it and doing calculated decisions. So this is the premise of the scholar. I sat down and wrote, the baseline of what we want to create around this narrative, and then tying it to the final piece, the exciting piece is with artificial intelligence. So scholar, ideally down the line, is going to be tied to artificial intelligence, where it's not an NFT that stands on its own. If you own a scholar, we can tie artificial intelligence, tie it to semantics, to a neural net, that the data is processed to the NFT, and the NFT is an extension of you. And the goal is for the scholar to be an extension of you that lives into this digital world and progresses, right? So that's a big premise. I know it's ambitious and it could be fiction, but it's also very possible. And that's what we want to do with Learn and Learnio, is get to that process. And that's just an NFT set. We're not even talking about protocol. We want to talk about the metaverse. We want to build the play to learn, all that type of good stuff. So, that was majority of the day. The other half was in technicality of learning Solidity. I went through some security, learned about vulnerabilities. I was practicing some code, learning functions, and a little bit about web3.js. The front end, really focusing on how to connect the front end to the chain and kind of doing the full stack variation for the dApp, or for a dApp, I should say. And then I collabed with Luis. We went to Starbucks and we were brainstorming some ideas for the art, which is what are the features that are going to be rare, super rare, and how to go around that. And yeah, I think I'll conclude it here. I just really wanted to address the premise of the scholar narrative. And keep in mind, this is still fresh. It's subject to change, but I think that is very ambitious. It's exciting. It could be based on sci-fi, but it's high potential of being true, being real. And we're working towards that. And that's the exciting part. Okay, so with that being said, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow.